Welcome back to Hertfordshire Zoo, planetzoo. On today's episode, inside of this square, we're going to be building the red fox enclosure. Now, obviously I'll turn it to daytime to make it easier to build. However, I do try and show you some clips of it at the night to give you an idea as to what the vision was, so to speak. So to start off this build, I put in the stained wood. I ended up building it on the grid and then I moved it, which absolutely changed the building experience for me because nothing else would line up. So my advice is build it on the grid and then move it or rotate it. I was aiming for a barn for the foxes, or at least as close as I can get to a barn. There is a prefab, like a blueprint for a barn, which I took some inspiration from. You'll probably see me place it down and go and look at it every now and then, because I'm not as imaginative as I'd like to think, so I do need to get some inspiration every now and then. However, it is just painted wood or stained wood and then recolouring that, going around with the white and adding in the area in the middle, which I don't know, what would you call it? It's like the loading area, I guess, to make it easier to load hay into it with the tractor. But obviously there is no tractor. So I don't really know what you would call it. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this build, and it's a shame that I've only got a few more animals left to go in the European zone, because the European zone typically is what I'm used to in real life. I live in Europe. Well, used to live in Europe. Brexit. I live in the UK, and I'm very familiar with a lot of the animals that you will see coming in and being built. You've got badgers next time. The last episode was the lynx. Now we've got the red fox, which we see almost every night, particularly in cities, and they make a sound like a crying baby, and it is scary, and it sets my cats off. Never seen them in a zoo though, so that's an interesting one for me. I don't know if they're typically more in mainland Europe or in other countries, maybe more in a zoo, but I don't think I've ever seen one in a zoo. But regardless, back to the build. This is sort of what I was saying about the area in which I would assume that hay would be delivered. And all I've done was get some planks, get a hook and some rope, and then put some pallets in and doubled up on the pallets to make it look a bit more legitimate. And then this thing here is an attempt at a ladder. So it's not the greatest, and it is extremely wide, so I had to make it slightly smaller by adding in some more flooring. I think it came out okay, but I added in a ladder, and this whole top area ends up getting covered in the, is it dry grass or hay, the bedding, because I have no other option. I don't have hay as an option, unfortunately. I don't know if that came in the barnyard pack, which I don't actually have, so if it's on there, then that's fantastic, and I'll know that for next time, I guess. But if it's not there, then it doesn't really matter. So this is me placing down the barn just to get some ideas. I ended up taking the gate off of this because I actually quite liked the way it looked, and I thought, why not just take it rather than try and recreate it? It didn't really make much sense to try and recreate it when I could just take it from what was essentially already built for me. And I do end up duplicating it across to the other side so that it was more of a double door kind of look and feel. I then added in I guess a top piece, a roof piece, and I saw it on the other build, on the prefab barn. I actually quite like the way that it looks. So I ended up adding that in, and then adding in a fake window which lights up. I didn't realise that they actually light up in the night, so they'll be used a bit more often moving forward. As you can see, I do take quite a bit of inspiration from it, but I think that's pretty much it. I don't think I actually end up taking... I know I don't take anything else from it, i.e. the gate, but I don't think I actually go and get any more ideas from it. So I think this is pretty much it. Of course, we have to add the lighting, because a lot of the European zone for me is at night. So I'm trying to put in a lot more lighting to make it easier to see the animals as if you were there at night, because that's the whole idea with this month's set of episodes. It's like the haunting. If you didn't see my, it's not a castle build, but a kind of castle tour, that's the plan. So for once, I actually tried to pre-plan where my exhibits or my enclosures were going by using the bamboo. So the bamboo will not be staying. Please don't think that's staying. I just thought it's the easiest one to put, because I know I won't be using it in this area. So I can put it there as like a marker to know where things can go to, or roughly where things can go to, because I tried to do it in size. They don't all stick to the size that they should be, but it gives me a rough idea, and it's definitely something I'll do moving forward, because it has helped me plan a bit better. Although I have had to move some things around in some future builds, it has made me be able to plan a lot better. So it's definitely something I'll do moving forward. Just here, these are the painted beams, I want to say. I had to add something because I felt like the sides, and particularly the guest entry, I guess, for the barn was a little bit boring. So I added in these accents of white just to add a bit of pop and more colour to the sides and of the build. This was supposed to, so I really struggled with what to do for the outside for the foxes, because if I had chain link fencing or mesh fencing, they would just, in real life, they would climb it and run off. If I had anything small, again, in real life, they would jump, they would go through, etc. So I experimented with this sort of mesh design, but again, like the last time, there's no triangular mesh, which is really unfortunate. However, I then found this glass piece, which is bubble glass, and I actually quite like the way that looks. Now, my original plan was to have the outdoors entirely capsulated with this mesh and bubble, but then I quickly realised that wasn't really going to work due to the sheer size of it, because it's quite a small area that they're actually in. So I ended up going with 3 of the bubble mesh builds, with some of the painted timber in the middle and around the sides to give it something. I don't really know what. I don't know how I came up with this particular build. They're not inside, they're not quite outside. I think it was just a way of me capping the top so that they couldn't run off or climb out if they wanted to. And out of everything else that I could see, it made the most sense, and I really could not think of anything else that I could have used that wasn't an official barrier. I didn't want to just use glass. I thought that was quite boring, and I thought wood or railing, in theory, they would climb out. The same as concrete. If they wanted to, they could climb out. So I end up moving this around quite a bit to try and get the angle correct, and then after a while I sort of gave up and just put it in straight rather than at an angle on both sides. Again, I think it came out okay. I'm not too fussed about how it's come out. I think it came out okay, so I'm quite happy with it. And I actually really like the bubble glass, and I have an idea for that moving forward. Whether it comes to fruition or not, I don't know, but I do want to use that in a future build. I then realised that I hadn't gone all the way into the barn, or I'd built the barn slightly too wide, so it didn't line up the way that I would want it to. So I had these weird sort of side pieces that the foxes could run out of, so I had to add the glass down the side, and I do end up sort of hiding that behind an information board, which you'll see shortly. And to be honest with you, there's not too much to this build after the barn, because the barn itself was the majority of the build, and the outside is just plants, rocks, well, a lot of plants and a lot of rocks. So I end up using the inside of the barn as something else. I say something else. I tried to make it look a bit better and added in this square with some more information boards or educational boards. Duplicated that, and again struggled with what I could do around the outside of this bit. And then I added in some glass on each side, and I thought, do you know what, that actually looks okay. Put in some mulch and some faux rocks and some, I guess, nice plants which didn't overlap through the glass or through the education boards as best as I could, because it would be great if it didn't clip. And here is the final result.